What's up, everybody? TimeOut crew back again with another podcast. Got Coach Zai down there, Dr. Pepper, and then, of course, myself, Big Trav. Just the three of us for tonight. Going to talk about quite a bit of football. We'll start kicking it off with last night's national championship game. Clemson won in dominating fashion, 44-16 over the Alabama football team, the pinnacle of college football. Clemson really dominated this game, so we'd like to hear from you guys. Parker, we'll start with you. What did you think about last night?
I just thought, I was really looking forward to the game, the fourth time they play. Two of them, this would be their third in the title game. The other one was in the semifinal. So, people, may hate it, but I love it. Great to see these two teams match up. And when you think college football, every team wants to meet Alabama. But really, Clemson has now, because of last night, what they did, that blowout victory, they put themselves in that category too. Teams want to meet Clemson and Alabama, I believe. I mean, you guys saw it. At first, a lot of scoring. It was starting out 16-14. I thought some Big 12 defenses were out there, like not a lot of defense going on, just a lot of offense. A lot of fireworks early, with that pick six return for house goal for 6. And then Clemson really, like Trevor Lawrence as a true freshman, to show, he can go to the NFL tomorrow and be insane. And all the talent on the outside they got, at wide receiver, that Ross kid is unbelievable talent, He was catching crazy catches. And, I think Clemson just showed that, it's not just Alabama anymore, Because getting one from Alabama, that happens every once in a while. You can't win them all. But now to win 2 out of the last 3, it's Clemson and Alabama. Before it was just Alabama, no longer. And I just think, I was a little surprised that Jalen, after a while, didn't, get a chance to play. But, they rolled with Tua, and understandably. But I think I don't know. That was Saban's worst loss at Alabama, so I don't know. Go back to the drawing board, but now Clemson's a different beast, so, and I believe, I'm going to call it right now, gentlemen, Clemson's going to win it next year, too, going back to back. So, Clemson, now it's Clemson and Alabama, no longer just Alabama. That's what I took from it.
Oh, Zai, what you got?
Well, Dr. Pepper, easy on going back to the drawing board. 55-4 in the last 4 seasons.
They just lost by 28. You ain't gonna make Clemson like that next year, buddy.
But what the game comes down to is that Clemson goes 3 and out. Tula comes out and throws a pick 6. Really gave Clemson a lot of momentum. And then Clemson's offensive line did a pretty good job giving Lawrence all the time he needed. And Clemson's got playmakers. They got just as good, if not better, playmakers than Alabama does. And so usually, when Alabama dominates, it's because the front 7 on both sides. And, you just didn't see that last night. Now that defensive tackle Alabama's got is a force in the run game. That dude's a real deal. But everything else, I thought Clemson was probably, from watching, was the better team. I think you have probably the better quarterback. You had probably the better skill players. And then you look at it, Clemson's defense was so motivated from what happened last year. And, a lot of times, we talk about in regular bowl games, college football a lot is about motivation because it's just what team put the more time in, work the hardest, and understands the little details. And what happens, Alabama made some mistakes, and really good teams take advantage of that. And that's, Nick Saban hit the head right on the nail when he said that, we had a couple third downs, even a couple long third downs, and we gave them up, and that's a ball game. You can't do that against good teams. So, I think Alabama folded a little easily. Could question some play calls, but there's just a couple. I think the pick 6 really turned the game around, and then they got the ball at the 1-yard line. They get called for a false start because they're trying to run toss plays, stuff like that, and they don't even get a touchdown out of that. So when you look at it, Alabama's always been run the ball up the middle, kind of use their beef, their strength, and I kind of think it's almost like they try to outdo themselves. And then the fake field goal, if that was Nick Saban, that might be the worst call of his career.
Yeah, that was terrible.
So at that point, especially when they come out and they're in playing safe, defense, just kick it, take the points. But, hats off to Clemson. Both teams in the last 4 seasons are 55-4. Both teams have 2 national championships. And until somebody does step in and says, hey, we want to be a part of this conversation, it's going to be those 2 teams for a long time. But Tula is going to have to prove that he can play against really good teams, because when he plays against, I saw some statistics when he plays against like top 10 defenses that are statistically good over a long period of time, he struggles. So, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Tula when it comes big games next year, not against the teams that he puts up 400 yards. So, but overall, like, Lawrence is the real deal. Clemson's playmakers are really good. You got E.T., you got the Ross kid. People underestimate Hunter Renfrew. I feel like that dude's been playing college football for about 10 years. They got dudes that have been there, done that. So they wanted a little bit more last night than Alabama did. And I think those guys in Alabama's locker room kind of got you still got to win a championship. It still is not like just because you're 14-0 doesn't mean you got to go out and do it every day the same way you've been doing it. So, hats off to Clemson though last night.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Man, I was Alabama all week. I was Alabama. I thought they were going to win it. I thought Saban's going to add on to her title. And Coach Zai can attest to this. 9 minutes before the game started, I switched to Clemson. And I'm like, man, Dabo Swinney's my second favorite coach, obviously behind Jimmy. But I just had a feeling. I'm like, you want to know what? There's something special about this Clemson team. Dabo's going to have these guys fired up, ready to play. Just had a great feeling. And like I said, Coach Zai can attest to that. So I switched to Clemson right before the game started. And, when they came out, it was a weird pace game right from the beginning. A couple turnovers. You had a couple of big touchdowns, etc. But in the end, I think even in the second half, I'm waiting. Alabama's like the Patriots. They get down, but they're never really out, I feel like. And we get down there and we see this field goal getting ready to happen. And it's like, okay, hey, just take the points, get a stop, come back. You're down 2 touchdowns, get a couple scores, you're back in the game going into the fourth. And then they fake this field goal. And, I texted Coach Zai blowing up. I'm like, my biggest pet peeve in football today in general is to never go for it on 4th down running a special teams play. If you're going to go for it, keep your offense on the field, please. These special teams guys, they're paid to kick the ball. They're paid to hold. They're not paid to, run on 4th and 7 straight into the middle of a defense. It just special teams, 4th down plays, they get lucky. They probably work 10% of the time. You keep your offense on there, you have a much better shot. So as soon as that happened, that's when the game was over for me. I knew Clemson was going to walk away with it. Trevor Lawrence, the kid's a stud, and it just shows you that true freshmen can play, and you have to adapt to it. And Clemson has adapted to, hey, if you're good enough to play, coming right out of high school, let's do it. I mean, if we think about it, Kelly Bryant led them to a national championship last year. He's the starting man. Trevor Lawrence walked in. He said, this is my job, and it's yours to lose. Kelly Bryant's transferred to Missouri. Trevor Lawrence is hoisting up a national championship trophy. So he played outstanding, threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He looked great. I mean, even when he was in the pocket, he was getting pressured all night. He would step up. He would climb the ladder inside the pocket. He wasn't scrambling to get out. He was taking hits right to the chin and still delivering darts. So hats off to him. Hats off to Clemson's coaching, Clemson's skill players. Like you said, Travis Etienne, he had a great game. He's probably going to be, if he declares for the NFL draft, he's going to be a guy that goes up there pretty high. Great running back. The kid that surprised me most was Justin Ross, who Clemson stole from Alabama. He was number 1 recruit in Alabama, and nowadays you think a guy coming out of that state is going to Alabama only. I mean, with that dominant of a program and the way they recruit, he's bound to go to Alabama. He said he took a visit to Clemson, fell in love with it, and he showed out. I mean, that one-handed catch he had over there on the sideline was probably the best we've seen all year. So when Clemson's making plays like that, they're hard to beat. I mean, hats off to Brent Venables on the defensive side. He had those boys ready to play, and that front line's, they're not something to mess with. You got probably 2 guys on that defensive line that are the potentially top 10 picks with Farrell and Wilkins. So they played well. I think this was was a punch in the jaw for Saban. He finally woke up and it's like, wow, okay, like you said, Parker, there's somebody competing with us at the top now. It's not just Alabama. I think, Dabo has solidified Clemson up there in the top 2 that say, hey, somebody's got to beat Clemson, somebody's got to beat Bama. If not, it's going to be these two round 5 next year. So yeah, it was a good game. It was still a fun game to watch because, like I said, you never really thought Alabama was quite out of it. It felt like they marched on the field every time, and it was either a turnover, like you said, Ryan, the false start when they're on the 1-yard line, just something that backed them up. But I guess this leads me into my next question here: is do you think Dabo has surpassed Saban or solidified his stance at Saban's level in coaching in college football? What do you guys think?
I guess I'll go first on this one. I would say not quite. Saban's got more titles. He's been, Bama's been at the top forever. Ever since he's been there. 2 years after he signed for them, they won a title. So Saban, he's getting there, and before you know it, in a couple of years, he could be there. But I want to call timeout on Nick Saban. I want to tell Nick Saban, buddy, it's not going to be a stroll in the park anymore. Clemson's here and here to stay, and so is Dabo, and before you know it, he could pass Saban. I believe that, for sure. But not yet. Not quite yet.
Parker with the timeout. I like it. Zai, what do you got?
It's not that close yet. Saban just, to mess with that record is crazy. And I'm not even a huge Nick Saban fan, but what he does year in and year out is crazy.
Yeah, but well, I got a question for you. 2 out of 3 years in a title game they played, the Clemson won. What does that tell you?
I mean, the one game came down to the last play.
Yeah.
I mean, and we'll be talking again. It'll be 2 out of 4 years because Alabama's going to win the national title next year.
Clemson going back to back, money.
Not going to happen. They lose too much up front. But what happens is, what a place Alabama is in. That when you lose a national championship game, people are kind of like, whoa. I mean, that just speaks to where they're at and where their program is. I mean, every other school would drool to be 14-0 going into the national championship game. I'll say this. Tula had a great quote after the game, and he said, here, what we're about, good is not good. Good is not good enough. Like, we're here to win, and we're not here to just be good. Like, we want to be great. We want to win. And so Alabama, they're going to be hungry next year. I think they get better. They bring Tula back. Najee Harris is going to be good luck with him next year. I think he should have been probably starting all year. I mean, Damian Harris has been a workhorse, but you could just see last night Najee is better than him. Gives you bigger plays, I think, and they bring a lot of guys back too, and they're going to take that. You talk about getting punched in the mouth. That's never happened to them at the national level like that. So you talk about having some motivation all summer. Nick Saban's not going to be a happy guy at those workouts, stuff like that. So Alabama will be the team to beat next year, and I don't even think it'll be that close.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, listen, Dabo has solidified himself. I read an article earlier today. It was said when Clemson first hired Dabo Sweet, I don't know if you guys remember, he wasn't head coach or nothing like that. He was a recruiting coordinator for Clemson. And when they hired him, everyone said that this dude was a bust and it wasn't going to work out. And, his first 4 years were kind of rough, but the past 6 years since then have been terrific. And, I don't know if he's not same caliber as Saban yet. I mean, Saban's just so far ahead of everybody, and he's been consistent with it. But I do think Dabo is, right there behind him. I think he's quickly rose that ladder, with the national championships he's brought in. He's recruiting great for Clemson right now. He's probably the only one on Bama's level right now in recruiting, if you think about it. I mean, just constantly retooling. Both these teams are going to lose guys to the draft. It's going to happen every year. But the thing of it is if you look at both the rosters top to bottom, they're returning a lot too as well. I mean, potentially we see Trevor Lawrence and Tua back in the national championship again next year. As crazy as it sounds, it could definitely happen. I don't think anyone is really on Clemson, Alabama's level yet. So unless one of these teams, they slip up early in the regular season, I don't see it happening, especially with Clemson in the ACC and Alabama, the way they schedule non-conference, even though they're in the SEC. I just don't see it happening. So it is potential, that we could see next year again, fifth year being the Alabama-Clemson duel. But it's on the rest of college football to catch up. It's like, hey, we're all big Michigan guys here. Like, Jim, we're going into the 5th year. Michigan, let's catch up. Texas, let's catch up. And, we'll see. We'll see if it happens. I think it's coming a little bit sooner. I think teams are finally starting to realize what, Nick Saban and Dabo have done and the way they've adapted and, some of their principles. I think a big thing, too, was that Dabo's coaching rate. He's always keeping quite a few of his coaches. If a couple leave, so be it. But, his coaches usually stay for a good tenure, whereas Alabama, you see O coordinators and D coordinators leaving all the time. And it's already happening this year, too.
That's I think that will start to change with Dabo. They won the one, and I think the defensive coordinator committed to stay. But I think that will start to change. Like a lot of Dabo people now will start to get more jobs. But I guess here, my question for you guys real quick would be this. Are you ready? Would you say that if Urban Meyer kept coaching, would you say that Dabo is a better coach than Urban Meyer? Because I think when you look at that way, it shows that Dabo still, he's not ready to be in that Nick Saban conversation yet. Because, in my opinion, if Urban would have kept coaching, he still would be the second best coach in college football.
It depends. I don't know about that. I think I might take Dabo over Urban. If you look at, I get it, Clemson being in the ACC conference and, probably playing a weak conference in the Big Ten. But if you think about it, you look at national championship wins, national championship appearances, playoff appearances now. Even back, Dabo's first, like I said, his first 4 years were rough. They weren't terrible, but they weren't great either. That's probably the only place that Urban has a leg up. But I kind of take Dabo right now over Urban, even if he was still at Ohio State.
I don't know. That's a really tough call for me because when you think Urban, they went back-to-back, right? So, not many can do that. Only, Bama has done that. And then winning their first ever playoff formatted title, They were the first, undisputed champions, So, I don't know. It would be a tough call, but I would honestly, right now, it's probably say Urban. That's a great point, Ty. Great point you brought up.
Yeah, I think just Urban, he won there in Florida, came to Ohio State, and instantly Ohio State was a powerhouse, and won the very first playoff. But, I think that's just the kind of the heat of the moment. Like Dabo dominates Saban, and now all of a sudden we want to have that conversation. But, Dabo's on his way up. He's going to continue to have success. So I'm not against saying, will he catch Saban? Will he deserve that conversation here soon? Absolutely, probably. But, Nick Saban's not done either. And if anything, Nick Saban probably in the first time in his career at Alabama, is probably, they're back to work. You talk about a little reality check of, hey, we're not the best dynasty, and so they're, like I said, I just think they're going to be so motivated next year. It's going to be the first time we see it, but, they haven't went through that. And I think that you kind of saw that yesterday with the players, and people want to question calls and stuff like that. But you think about it, they're never in those situations really. Usually the calls are easy for them. It's usually, they score so many touchdowns and they dominate people that how many times do they have to think about when they're going to send a field goal team out of even thinking about faking it? And then all of a sudden when they start to fall behind 15, 20 points, a lot of those coaches, especially with the coordinator changes and all that they've had, they've never been there. They've never even had to think about stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you try to do too much. And, Clemson just, it was one of those nights for them. It was just everything clicked in place. Every play got made. It's just it seemed like every big call, just everything was boom, 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 boom for Clemson. And for Alabama, it kind of was like, whoa. And I think when they look back on it, they probably think the same thing. Like, man, we made some mistakes, coaches, players, everybody across the board. But, yeah, I'm just not – 55-4, both teams. So great run for Dabo, and Clemson is here. They're going to be there. But hold the brakes on Dabo being in Nick Saban's legacy yet.
He's getting there though. He's rising. I think if you give him as much time like what Urban has, and like what Nick has had, I think he's going to be there when it's all said and done. We got to realize that Dabo's still a young guy too. Very energetic. I think he's bringing in great recruiting classes. So we'll see. I think it's on. I think we should be talking more that it's on the rest of college football now to catch up to these two teams. I think they separated themselves the way they recruit each and every year. even the classes they got coming in next year. So it'll be interesting to see, can somebody do it next year? Can college football finally catch up to these two powerhouses? It'll be interesting. 2019 season, we'll see what happens. We'll see what unfolds. But that'll wrap it up. If you guys don't have anything else, that'll wrap up our college football national championship game. Clemson. We'll see what happens next year with that. And we'll keep on the topic of football, though. We'll start getting into a little bit of NFL playoff game predictions for this week.